I wanted to jump in here before getting to the main part of the video because there's one tip I forgot to include about caring for your flute that's really important. If you use the cleaning swab that came with your instrument to swab it out, you'll obviously also need to keep on hand a piece of cloth. But the problem with most flute cases is that there's not enough room to store that cloth. If you try to fold it up and put it on top of the instrument, it can exert pressure on the mechanism that could cause things to bend. So what I recommend is, when you're done playing, put everything away and then tie that piece of cloth around the handle. It'll keep it out of the case, and if you use a classy gingham pattern like I have here, it makes your flute a little bit easier to identify. Okay, now on to the rest of the video. Let's start with the head joint. Because the lip plate is an integral part of the instrument, it can be a little tricky to clean. You'd never want to immerse the head joint in water to clean it because there's a large cork here above the lip plate that could hold moisture and create an ideal environment for things to grow. The best way to clean the lip plate is with a small amount of rubbing alcohol or denatured alcohol. Just apply it, make sure it's distributed all the way around, and then allow it to evaporate for a minute or two. Then use a polishing cloth or a clean lint-free cloth to wipe the plate. If there's still some buildup, you can apply some alcohol directly to the cloth and use that to scrub it. You'd want to avoid using any sort of liquid polish or more aggressive cleaner here because the lip plate is going to rest against your chin and anything on it could react adversely with your skin. If there's buildup inside the embouchure hole, you can clean it out with a Q-tip. And again, alcohol can be useful here. Just apply some to the Q-tip and wipe. The most effective way to clean the body of your flute is to swab it out. There are any number of products made for this, but the most straightforward one is the cleaning rod that would have come with your flute, assuming you still have it. You can loop through a piece of clean, lint-free cloth. Just make sure it's not too large because a piece that's too large could get stuck in the bore. Pull it through and then loop it over the top to prevent the interior of your instrument from the end of the metal rod. Wipe in and out, turning as you go. And then inspect the bore to see if it appears dry. If it looks like it's still wet, continue swabbing until it looks dry. For swabbing the head joint, you can occasionally apply a little bit of alcohol to the swab before you run it in and out, and that can just help remove any dirt or debris that may be inside the head joint. You may also have an implement like this, called a pad saver, for cleaning the interior of your instrument. And these can work well as swabs as long as you don't leave them inside the instrument, which unfortunately is what most people do. I'd liken that to taking a shower and then wearing the wet towel you use to dry off under your clothes. You don't want to keep that moisture inside the instrument. Just run it in and out, or from one end to the other, as you would with a swab, and then allow it to dry completely outside the case. The other best practice to adopt for instrument cleanliness is to wash your hands before and after you play. For some people, the oils on their hands can cause premature wear or corrosion of the mechanism, but for the rest of us, it's just good to avoid getting any foreign dirt or contaminants on the instrument. Other things you can do to keep your instrument clean are to wipe down the exterior, especially if you've been playing outside on a hot day or under the lights of a stage and your hands are sweaty. Just use a clean, lint-free rag again, and be careful of the pads as you go. Make sure you wipe away from the pads. There's no need to use any sort of cleaning products or polish, although you could use something like this, which is a special polishing cloth with dry polish impregnated in it. Again, as you go, just make sure you're wiping away from the pads. Now let's talk about a few mechanical issues that are common that you could diagnose and address at home. If it seems like your flute has stopped working completely or it squeaks badly, the most common culprit could be a popped spring on one of the trill keys. The trill keys are these two small keys at the top of the body joint. The spring is this thin piece of wire, and it's supposed to engage with this cradle on the underside of the key. The spring keeps the key closed until you press one of these touch pieces. Each key has its own spring, and they may both be located here, behind the keys at the top of the instrument, or one may be here, and the other here, toward the bottom of the body joint, as is the case on this flute. The spring isn't engaged with its cradle, the key can flop open and stay open, causing a leak. Reset the spring in its cradle with a tool like this called a spring hook or a crochet hook, or you could use the tip of a precision screwdriver, or in some cases you can even use your fingernail. Whatever you do, be careful as you apply force so that you don't slip off the spring and scratch the finish on the instrument or damage the pad. Another common issue with some brands of flutes is that the screw that holds the A and B flat keys in place can become loose. That screw runs through here and has a point right here that engages with a recess in this rod. If your flute stops working intermittently or the lower notes just feel airy, check to see if this assembly is loose. Gently grasp the B flat key and see if it wobbles back and forth. You can see the motion right there. If it does, you can tighten the screw here. Tighten it gradually and check frequently to see if the mechanism is still wobbling. There we go. On some instruments, you can over-tighten the screw, which will then cause the B flat key to get stuck down. If that's the case, simply back the screw back off a little bit until the key works again, but there's no wobble. Unfortunately, in this situation, over time, the screw will likely loosen itself again and the problem will return. So when you can, take the instrument to your technician to have them refit the screw and permanently correct that problem. There are a lot of connections between the keys on a flute, which we call regulations, where one key closes one or two more. Any of these regulations can go out of adjustment over time, causing leaks. There are too many variables to cover in this video, and it's difficult to diagnose or repair many of them without a thorough understanding of the mechanism. If your flute is in good working order, the best thing you can do is to spend a few minutes studying the mechanism. Which keys close which other keys, and how do they connect? Are there screws to adjust those relationships? Or just pieces of silencer material glued in place? If you can understand how the instrument works before it breaks, you'll be in a better position to at least diagnose problems, even if you aren't equipped to fix them. One final note about flute having to do with the tenons, which are the connections between the joints. Here's the foot joint tenon, head joint tenon. Excuse me, the body joint tenon. If you find it's difficult to insert the head into the body or the body into the foot, first inspect the end of the tenon for dents. If it's not round or you see any other signs of damage, don't attempt to force the tenon into the socket because it could become stuck or damage the socket. If, however, it looks okay but it's just a little tight, you can grab that clean, lint-free cloth again, apply a little alcohol, and use that to wipe the tenon and the socket. You may be surprised at how much debris you collect. Then try again. You should never apply grease to a tenon, cork grease or any other lubricant, because they can collect and hold dirt and cause more problems down the line. If you clean things up and the tenon is still tight, that's a reason to call the technician. If a tenon is loose, especially the foot joint tenon, which is short and can allow the foot joint to fall off if left unattended, you can temporarily tighten it by applying a very small piece of masking tape or painter's tape or even post-it note to the tenon. Usually won't last very long, maybe only until you take the tenons apart again. So it's something that you should take to your technician as soon as possible to have it tightened, but that can work in a pinch. I hope you found this information helpful, but if you have further questions or an issue that I didn't cover here, please reach out and I'll do whatever I can to help you. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.